Well, the last time President Biden held a solo White House news conference was nearly a year ago. At that lectern, Democrats are hoping he can turn the page now from the party's setbacks at the White House. Reportedly considers a new communication strategy. They're going to do a reset. President Biden has given fewer than half as many news conferences as any modern president at this point in their term. In fact, President Biden's three immediate predecessors all held double-digit news conferences by this point in their terms. Joe, I'm coming to you first.
Well, as you noted, he hasn't held a solo press conference at the White House in nearly 300 days. As a dad, I can tell you that's enough to carry a baby to full term and take a month off to enjoy the moment. But I think this will be as big a test. Well, you know, we got to put it in context somehow, right? This will be as big a test for the White House press corps as it will be for Mr. Biden, because here you have a president at 33% approval, 28% approval among Hispanics. Just soak that in for a second. Only 1 in 4 independents support him. Build Back Better is dead. Voting rights, which really should be called the federalization and overhaul of elections, also pushing daisies. So there's plenty of discontent here that goes well beyond conservatives and Republicans. So here's what I would ask for what it's worth. Mr. President, more than 2.3 million people have crossed over the U.S. southern border since you took office. That's almost 2.5 times the total population of your home state of Delaware. You have yet to visit the border. Yet fentanyl is coming into this country in record numbers, primarily from Central America. And it is now the leading killer of those living in this country for those between the ages of 18 and 49. More than COVID, more than suicide. So what are you doing? What is your vice president doing to address A, the border crisis, and B, the fentanyl crisis killing so many relatively young Americans? I'd kick it off with that, and then I would leave it here, Harris. Sir, why is it harder to vote in your home state of Delaware, where you served as a senator for many years, or harder for Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer's home state of New York in terms of voting there than it is in Georgia, which you have dubbed Jim Crow 2.0? Specifically, why is Georgia worse when comparing those states? That's what has to happen here. We need reporters to get specific, and we need them to pass their own test in terms of accountability and scrutiny. And I guess we're going to find out if they pass that test in about 4 hours from now, Harris.
Well, Kayleigh, we know that the previous White House was given that test almost every time you guys walked up to the lectern. But this is a president who's rarely alone taking a lot of questions. It'll be interesting.
It'll be incredibly interesting, Harris. You know, as a press secretary and as a president, presumably, I assume the president pays attention to the news. Anytime you have a big event like this, which certainly there's been a lot of buildup, this is only the second solo press conference for President Biden in the White House, you wake up and you survey the headlines. And Joe just walked us through some of the crises, but the problem for this administration is when the media starts to notice. Look at the headlines President Biden and Jen Psaki woke up to. Gallup, Biden year 1 approval rating subpar, extremely polarized. The Hill, Biden hits 1-year mark in dire straits. The Washington Post, the long slide, inside Biden's declining popularity as he struggles with multiple crises. And Politico saying this: poll numbers are underwater, his agenda is stalled, inflation is soaring, COVID-19 is raging, and the midterms are coming. That, as a press secretary and a president, are not the headlines you want to wake up to. The real question here is whether the media, Harris, will stand up and ask the questions. There are 4 journalists in that room I know to be good journalists. Among them are Peter Doocy, of course, Philip Wegman, a great journalist, Steve Nelson, James Rosen. There are some good reporters in there. But will they be called on? Will they be called on? Or will Jen Psaki give Joe Biden the list of people to question him? Those 4 names are missing. I know those journalists would hold him accountable.
Can I ask you a quick follow-up, though, Kayleigh, and you're going to take it away from here. But I'm curious, did you ever pass out, or were you given a list? I mean, did you know exactly who was going to ask what in the room? Like, you had your 4 favorites, so you knew who would be fair. And I totally get that.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I've been in those instances with you and interviewed the president. I don't ever remember having that kind of information giving to your team. But that's what we've seen. And I mean, when Jen Psaki says, well, it depends on what you ask if the president's going to take your questions. Well, that tells me, is he getting the questions in advance? Look, it's a fair question.
Yeah, it is a fair question if they're getting questions in advance. You know, reporters weren't giving me questions for President Trump in advance. Maybe one or two reporters would say, hey, I'm interested in this. Like, this is what I want to ask the president. Heads up, because they want to get their question answered. But no, I didn't have a list of every question. I knew the reporters in the room. And I'd say, hey, Mr. President, maybe don't call on this reporter today. They seem a little hot. But I'll tell you this, President Trump, if I told him not to call on a reporter, that was usually the first reporter he called on.
He would do it.
Exactly. Exactly. Emily, I wanted you to take a look at these numbers. You know, when you look at those solo news conferences in the White House, Bush had 4, Obama had 5, Trump had 1 conference in the White House, Biden so far 1. But when you look at the numbers of, you know, press conferences with foreign leaders and whatnot, Biden has done far fewer than his predecessors. And it only comes, by the way, after the White House Correspondents Association president called him out, Steve Portnoy, with very strong words saying this: Eisenhower, who championed democracy versus totalitarianism and communism, built the interstates and sent troops to integrate schools, made a point of holding news conferences 2 times a month. The historical record of a presidency requires more than fleeting Q&A. He said that on January 9th, and then we get this announcement of a press conference a few days later. So my point is, it only came after really begging from the press and the president of WACA that we even got this press conference.
Right, and I think his point is important to underline. We have a facsimile of a president there in the White House. We have a shell, a vessel, someone who is occupying that position that certainly has in no way communicated any type of dedication to the American public, certainly not in the realm of communication and transparency, which, by the way, are pretty much the only 2 things we have to go on, right? Other than leadership, which clearly is missing too. Kaylee, I'd like to also discuss something that you just touched on. So when a reporter would say to you, hey, we're interested in discussing the southern border, it was because they wanted to ensure that you could bring all of the information. It was for the purpose of ensuring that they were as educated as possible, to ensure the highest volume of information transfer possible. Here, however, with this White House, the asking of the questions, knowing in advance, knowing who and what to call on, is because of the spin. And that media spin is what we continue to enjoy as an American public, including just this week when Joe Lockhart on CNN just on Sunday complained that the press is treating Biden unfairly, he said, with the same snark he said that, yes, Trump deserved, his words, but not this president. And then he literally said there ought to have been a dividend for, quote, restoring truth and decency to the White House. I can't believe that the press is treating this president with this same snark. If this is what he deems unfair, I have no idea what treating this president with courteous criticism, what that would do to his charts. And then he went on to say that Jen Psaki is blessing us with the truth every day, he said, and yet we don't see her on air, he said, therefore ensuring that media was about entertainment and not information transfer. But last time I checked, this network has her every time she carries a live press conference. So at least here, we're committed to facts, the truth, and transparency. However, the White House seems to not be.
Right. And Dagan, it's my view that the press should reflect in some way the mood of the people. And look, when this first press conference happened with President Biden, he was very popular. Immigration was his really one crisis at that point. This is a different mood. The American people have said we've had enough of Joe Biden, 33% approval, Quinnipiac. A poll out today from Politico that a majority disagree that Biden is energetic, a strong leader, a clear communicator, keeps his promises, and is capable of leading the country. When this is how the American people feel, it is incumbent on a press to ask tough questions. Do you think we will get that?
Yes, because they're narcissists, and the narcissism trumps the being a sycophant to a president who is this profoundly unpopular. It would be a bad look if the press bow down and genuflect in front of this president and don't ask hard questions. And to that note, there are 2 things: the substance of this that will be important, and then also the performance. The substance is just ask the president, this is a bad year. Who are you going to fire? Should Ron Klain go? He clearly vetted that speech that you gave down in Georgia. And even Dick Durbin, not so subtly, said that it went a little too far. And I was surprised that Dick Durbin knew even where that line was.
Or is it one of many cabinet secretaries who need to hit the beach, so to speak? I can go through a list, but Becerra, Health and Human Services, disaster on COVID, Mayorkas on the border, Cardona's targeting parents, failing children on education, or Jennifer Granholm, who didn't even know how much oil the United States consumed when talking about the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Oil prices at a 7-year high. On the performance, watch Biden to see if he's cogent, to see if he has a Biden moment or moments. If he makes sense, does he lose his train of thought? Does Joe Biden today have that kind of moment where if he was your grandfather, you get the family together and talk about taking his car keys away?
Right, exactly right. Well, look, we don't take every White House briefing, but we will certainly, like yesterday we didn't, but we will certainly be taking President Biden's briefing today, and make sure to tune in to Fox News live coverage of President Biden's second solo White House news conference. You will not want to miss it. Our coverage kicks off at 4 p.m. Eastern Time with Martha McCallum.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.